You are now watching Believe. Do you believe?
All right, welcome, fans of the St. Louis Blues, the Blue Note podcast. I guess it's not really a real episode, but we're going to upload it as one. But as of right now, as of this very moment, we have the NHL Draft going on. The Minnesota Wild just picked at number 19 as we speak. Ethan Carter, Mike Meyer here with you, Believe Network, and we're on Twitter here now. This will be uploaded on the Believe Network on our page after we're done here. This is about interacting with the fans. This is about seeing what the Blues do with the 23rd pick. I mean, there's been a lot of speculation all day about what could happen with the pick, whether they trade it, whether they get a higher pick for Tarasenko. That is not going to happen, obviously, at this point. But I guess we'll just throw it over to you first. I mean, where do you stand right now as the Blues are 3 picks away?
I think they're going to be selecting. I don't think there's going to really be any sort of movement here. There's still plenty of different people for the Blues to be able to select that, especially that you and I here went over. But as far as a potential Tarasenko trade, I don't see it happening here within this first round. If it's going to happen here, like it's been speculated, I think it could be tomorrow here during rounds 2 through 7.
Yeah, I think I'm a little bit worried about us going live here and then the Blues trading out. But thank you, everybody, joining. Right now on Twitter, we have 52 viewers right now. Somebody must have retweeted if we got those numbers. So the comments are not showing up on here, so I'm just going to pull the comments up on my phone. So you want to make any comments? We got one here from @ZTwin78 says the Blues need to draft Lambert. That's Brad Lambert, Finnish centerman, who was looked at as kind of possible number 2, number 1 pick about a year ago. He's the number 2 player on Megan Chayka's best player available on ESPN right now. So
right.
I don't hate that idea if he's there, of course, because you still have Washington, Pittsburgh, and Anaheim in front of them. I don't know about the value there. I mean, he still seemed like a boom or bust. I think there's obviously a lot of talent there with the way that people viewed him last season, but I'm not 100% sure that he's going to be the guy the Blues take. I feel like they're going to go with a bit of a safer pick. I'm very much leaning defenseman right now. Like,
yeah.
I
still think that they could end up going. And first of all, I don't think that Lambert's going to be available at that pick. I mean, I would be surprised if he would be available at that pick, but I still think the Blues are going to lean a little bit more towards a guy here like Pickering. He's been heavily linked here to the Blues. I don't believe that there's anything concrete here surrounding that. I mean, you never know. I mean, shoot, Shane Wright dropped 4 spots.
Yeah.
So you never know here at this point. He's still listed. Pickering is still listed at number 7 here on Megan's best available. If that's what we're going to choose to go here off of. For those wondering, I do have a screen that's down here. So I'm just trying to be able to keep my eye here, like on the draft here in itself. But I don't know. I could also see the Blues just going forward here as well. I mean, there's still plenty of different guys that are going to be available here at this point. Philip Messar, I think, could be interesting. Miro Shininkin, Ivan. We're just going to call him Ivan because I'm just going to butcher his name every single time. I really think that he could be a potential good spot here for the Blues here as well. But, we'll see. Capitals are selecting here right now, so I'll be interested to see where they end up going here at this point.
Coach T Shield says trade out. Oh. They just took your guy.
Yep, there goes Ivan.
I believe he has some sort of health condition or issue that probably made him not go as high as he was going to go. Hodgkin's lymphoma diagnosis in March, so I think that probably affected his stock.
Yeah,
but this pick makes a lot of sense. I'm very not surprised that the Capitals made this pick.
No, Capitals are a huge Russian-friendly team, and you don't want to say that they're just making this pick here simply just because of the Russian connection, but the shoe fits here as well. Let's be real here at this point. So, I mean, it's just a great story here for them, and as people are saying here on Twitter right now, he just screams Washington Capitals. I think it's a great pick here for them. Do you want to talk here really fast? It's coming up to be pick 21 here in just a second, but there's been some traction and a lot of interaction here with especially the Chicago Blackhawks.
Yeah, I mean, one thing that the Blackhawks kind of did, like the very low thing, which was the DeBrincat trade, like that.
Yeah,
they didn't get enough there. Like, I don't think you could justify that.
No.
That's a 24-year-old who has 2 40-goal seasons.
Yeah,
I don't care if he's playing with Patrick Kane or not. He's a stud.
And it was super short-sighted here of them. I mean, they had 2 picks, 2 options here, rather. Poor timing to be able to say the word picks. So you could go short-term and choose to move a guy here like DeBrincat and choose to gather as many young assets here as possible and to start accelerating the rebuild. So in that sense, I mean, it makes a lot of sense for them to be able to do it that route. But on the other end, like you just said, you have a guy who is a 2-time 40 goal scorer who's young. Why would you not want to try and be able to build around him? So I don't know. You're damned if you do, damned if you don't here if you're Chicago. And I mean, they chose to go with the former and just try to get the accelerated rebuild going here. Chicago really, really needs to be able to get some good press here going for them. And so by moving out a couple different players to allow them, again, to be able to start the accelerated rebuild, I don't know. It's not a bad option, but it's not a great option, especially in that return that they got for DeBrincat.
If I'm going to defend them in any way, which I don't really want to, but if I'm going to defend them, I think number one, I think teams that were trading for him are scared of the $9 million qualifying offer next summer. I think that's a scary thing for a lot of teams. And then I also think that teams like Philadelphia weren't willing to move number 5 and other assets to get him. I think also if you're Chicago, I know you're getting players tonight, but I think getting a more established prospect or a prospect who's closer to being ready would have been the right move in that regard. But I also think here's the other thing with Kyle Davidson and what they're doing in Chicago. Make no mistake, they are trying to be the worst team in the league so they can get Connor Bedard at next year's draft.
Yeah.
I'm 100% positive of that. And I will say the Kirby Dach trade was very good. I think that's a very good trade for them because you're going to get the 13th pick. They took Frank Nazar with that pick. I think that's a good pick. Dach is not the guy. Like, the Dach pick was a reach. Everybody knew it in 2019. Taking him number 3 shouldn't have been the pick. Everybody knew that. He was pretty good year 1 there. I thought his rookie season when he came up, he was pretty good. Injury at the World Juniors and just a disastrous season last year. So a new town for Dach with Montreal. We'll see how he fares there. I think that also makes sense as to why Montreal took Slavkovsky at number 1. You get a winger there with Nick Suzuki. I think the eventual line of Slavkovsky, Suzuki, and Caulfield could be really fun to watch. But the reason you bring in Kirby Dach is that you hope he could be your number 2 center. That's probably why – I don't know if that's why they didn't take Shane Wright, but that's something to justify it, is that you're getting Dach, who was the number 3 pick 3 years ago. So we have something here real quick. At ZTwin78 in the chat says, watch Lambert go right before the Blues pick. That happens to like all my teams in every sport, so it's probably going to happen.
Yeah, regardless if it's fantasy or not. I mean, let's be real. That's just going to always end up happening. But again, you can still end up getting a guy here like Pickering that is still very comparable, still very, very a good option, I think, here for the Blues. Frank Saravelli here did say, so if you're keeping score, it's DeBrincat and Dach for 7, 13, 39, and 66 overall. Little underwhelming for both of them.
Makes it a little bit better though than the original disaster that the DeBrincat trade seemed like at first. But getting number 13 for Dach is very good.
Yeah, it's good here for them at this point. I'm interested to see here what Pittsburgh is doing as they get ready to be able to walk up here on the stage. But really fast, Fleury returning to Minnesota.
Yeah,
Thoughts?
3.5 mil, 2 years. I think that's good for Minnesota. I didn't really think the Blues thing was ever a possibility, although I thought, maybe. Also, I feel like Pittsburgh is going to take either Messar or Urov here. That just feels like a Pittsburgh pick, but I don't know. Z-Twin also asked what was our thoughts on Shane Wright falling to Seattle, which I think is just a great pick for Seattle.
I think he's really happy that he didn't go to Arizona at that pick.
Yeah, that would have been bad
I'm
for the league.
Yeah, I'm sure that he's sweating. Oh, look, here's the new 6-year man himself.
Yeah, I think the
Holy
Pittsburgh
cow.
re-signing Letang was great and all. Not a bad number, but the term is very scary. But if you're trying to win now with
Yeah.
Crosby, then I guess you got to do it.
I mean, let's face it, Chris Letang is the future trade selection here there
You
goes
just keep
Pickering.
mentioning these names; they keep getting picked. You mentioned
Oh,
Miroshnichenko, you mentioned Pickering, and out they go. Don't mention Lambert,
all right.
even though I just did it.
All
So
right.
Pickering.
Holy eyebrows on this man.
So
His
yeah,
father has the eyebrows of
the
all eyebrows.
the future of Beniers and Wright as your 1 and 2 center is pretty legit for Seattle.
Yeah. Yeah. It's definitely good. I think the future's looking bright here for them, especially like up in Seattle. Do you think that it was his um, personality, like his interviews, that maybe caused him to drop a little bit? I mean, he just seemed like he was really full of himself. I mean, there's confidence, but then there's also just like where you got a way too big of a head.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like it's probably more so Slavkovsky overwhelming Montreal more than anything. But the problem that I have with it is I think Slavkovsky's going to be a good player, but I also think Shane Wright's like a sure thing. Like I think Shane Wright is a legitimate. He will be 100% a top 6, probably first line center for many years. So it's kind of weird. It's kind of weird to think that Shane Wright going number 4. I think New Jersey made the right pick not taking him. I think Arizona made the
Yeah.
right pick not taking him. So it makes sense that if Montreal wasn't going to take him, that Seattle would. But it's really something. It really is.
Yeah.
It's surprising. And next year's draft is something that I think a lot of teams need to prepare for as well, because next year's draft is much better at the top than this one. Like there is
Yeah.
3 or 4 of those guys. You look at Bedard, Michkov, Fantilli. There's some legitimate players in next year's draft. That's why teams like Arizona, Chicago, Seattle, probably those teams need to be pretty much as bad as possible.
Yeah. Well, and if you remember too, I mean, just a couple of years ago, this draft class was slated to be a huge generational class. Huge. And it still may be a generational class that it's just one that scouts are just having a hard time grasping around, simply just due to the COVID effect.
Yep.
You don't know. I mean, because you have so many different missed games, missed time, and I think that's one of the reasons why so many scouts are just down on these guys. But so I who knows? Who knows here at this point? But I'm hoping that some of these guys here pan out, because I've got a dynasty draft here that's going to be coming up that I have 3 first round selections in the top 16. So I'm hoping these guys kind of pan out a little bit.
Yeah.
That's just me, at least.
Yeah, you need him for sure. I hope Doug
Yeah.
Armstrong knows that we're doing this so he doesn't trade out. And if he trades out, I hope it's not to like 32, so we got to be here all night. That would be.
Oh my gosh,
disastrous.
don't say that. Don't say that.
So going back to Chicago real quick, here are the guys that they passed on to take Kirby Dach at number 3. Now, I'm not going to mention some of them just because a couple of them we either don't know or they were never going to go there. Moritz Seider, who won the Calder last year, was never going to go number 3. That was never going to happen. Philip Broberg, who went to Edmonton at 8, was never going to happen. But elsewhere, Bowen Byram went 4. And we all knew that Byram should have been the pick. Everybody said Chicago take Byram, and I was thinking deep down, don't take Byram, don't take Turcotte, because Turcotte went 5 to LA. And then the other one I'll just bring up, Dylan Cousins was probably never going to go 3. I doubt it. He went 7 to Buffalo, but Trevor Zegras 9th to Anaheim. So the more you look at it and the more you see, Stan Bowman's last few years were just terrible there. Just terrible. Like the Seth Jones thing completely screwed the franchise.
I'm honestly surprised.
I'm not going to complain about it.
Yeah, I'm honestly surprised though that they have not tried, and you can't say that you don't know if they've tried to be able to move him out or not, but I'm surprised that they haven't tried to move him out here at this point, or maybe even package him together with either DeBrincat or Doc. And I mean, again, you never know if they actually tried to do it or not here at this point, but yeah, these are guys that needed to be able to get moved out.
Nobody wants
here.
that Seth Jones contract. That contract might be the worst contract in the league in like 3 years because 8 years, 9.5 for a guy who's probably never going to be like a top 10 defenseman in the league is the dumbest thing ever, especially when you're in a rebuild. Like, I really wonder if Patrick Kane goes this summer. I feel like that might be something that happens. If they're trying to be as bad as possible, then why not? Although I've always felt that Taves is more likely to go now over Kane. But real quick here, I got Kevin Weeks just tweeted, keep an eye on. I'm told several clubs are expressing interest in Canadians veteran goalie Jake Allen. Among some interested clubs, Washington, Edmonton, New Jersey, and more. It would be absolutely hilarious if the Blues had any interest in that. They don't, but it would be hilarious if they did.
I don't see them doing that.
I mean, yeah,
the same with Montreal. Yeah.
Is it the same one the Blues gave him, or is it a new one?
No, it's a new one.
How much is it? I wonder. Because if it's not that much, I don't hate it.
He was, oh boy, cap friendly. You did all kinds of stuff here.
Also, Jaron Drager just said that Arizona and Edmonton, since we're not just a Blues podcast, we do talk about the league, so I will bring this up. Arizona and Edmonton are close on a deal for Edmonton to create more cap space by moving Zach Cassian to Arizona, which is going to be something that we see all over the league this summer with teams like Arizona and Chicago.
Yeah.
We saw it with Arizona last year.
And again, back to my previous point here about Chris Letang. I mean, let's face it, he's going to be a future Arizona Coyote on the long-term IR. I mean, let's just be real.
All right, Anaheim's about to pick here at 22, so the pick before the Blues. I think they're going to snipe Lambert from us. I just have that feeling. Even though it's not like Lambert's my number one guy right now exactly, because I still want to see Yager Furcus, but do the Blues go back to the WHL well for the second time in 3 years? I don't know.
Jake Allen still has 1 year left here on his contract at $2.875 million. So
if you get to August and you don't have anybody, do you consider it? And if he's still in Montreal?
If you got the cap space, I don't know. I don't think it'd be a bad option. Nathan Gauthier. Okay, so you got
options.
You've got Yager Furcus, and you've got Brad Lambert here at this point.
Those are the guys that I would want, but I also think defenseman is very possible. Now, if we look at the defenseman that they could take, I think number one on that list is probably one of the U.S. guys, whether it's Ryan Chesley or Seamus Casey or Lane Hudson. I don't think they're going to take Lane Hudson. He's 5'7". I know he's got tons of offensive skill, but I don't think they're going to start off this offseason by drafting a 5'7" defenseman in the first round. I don't see that happening.
They can't. They have enough undersized defensemen, and they need somebody big with size, especially if they're going to go towards here on the defensive side here of things. I think and people are already saying Ryan Chelsea should be the pick. So
is it Chelsea or Chesley?
I don't know.
I think I mix up letters. I don't even know.
I don't know. We'll be able to see here shortly.
Well, they still got time to trade it, so we'll see if they do. It seems like a very Armstrong thing to trade it, but who knows? Weird. Is it kind of weird how Doug Armstrong didn't even finish in the top 10 or top 11 for general manager of the year? That seems kind of weird to me. Like the way that he retooled the roster that quickly. Buchnevich, Saad, those moves.
Yeah.
Well, what did David Poyle do for Nashville? I mean, come on, like why is he ahead of him?
I mean, really nothing here at this point. I mean, and I think it could just be a biased opinion.
And Kevin Adams,
that just made me a little sour about it.
Kevin Adams for Buffalo, they were terrible. Why would he even be considered? This Gaucher, just by looking at him, he looks like he's going to be good. That's a team. Anaheim's a team that's like low key, as the kids say, I guess. They've drafted very well recently. McTavish, Zegras, Drysdale, really well. That's a big center too. 6'3", 207. All right, you're gonna have options here.
Who are you wanting them to build a pick?
It's hard to narrow it down to one. I think we knew there would be a ton of options there, but I didn't know there'd be this many of the options that we liked. I mean, more so, I guess the guys that I picked overall, I think a few years were taken. But who's the center? Philip Messar or whatever. He's there. He was one of your
Yeah,
guys.
I really like him.
Just seeing who I have to write about tonight, I think is the big thing here. Last 2 years, it's been forwards. I think defenseman might be on the horizon. That's just the feeling that I get. Do you think the Blues will trade Vladimir Tarasenko before July 20th?
If he is in fact going to be traded, I think it's going to be before then. I think it's going to be sooner rather than later. That's
sure seems
if
like Carolina
he's going to be
is the
traded.
team. Sure seems like Carolina is the team. I think they might have been the team tonight had they had a first-round pick.
Yeah, and the Blues could not afford once again to have either no first-round draft pick or second-round draft pick. It's been the last 4 years now they've had one of either first or second-round draft picks and not both draft picks.
Yeah.
So
Jeremy Rutherford just says the Blues have the hat and sweater ready, but aren't walking to the stage yet. So I don't know what that means. My number one, if it's a forward, it's Brad Lambert. And also keep an eye out for Danila Yurov. And if it's a defenseman, I've always had this thing for Seamus Casey, just because I know he's not very big. He's 5'10", but he's also really good defensively. So I'm going to say Seamus Casey. If it's a defenseman, if it's a forward, Brad Lambert would be who I want, but Danila Yurov would not be the worst pick if they take it, because they could trade any second now. We don't even know.
Yeah.
So I just picked number 1 on the board, number 2 on the board, number 4 on the board. So really going off the board here. Really,
Blues are heading to the stage.
Shots. All right, they're making
the stage.
Here we go. All right, future of the franchise. Not really. He won't be here for 3
2017, Robert Thomas 241 games, and of course our boy Klim Kostin at 46.
They've made use of all of those picks there, except for Kostin. To this point, I mean, Thomas is good. Bolduc and Neighbors project to be good. They got Bach traded for Falk, which the Falk thing was disastrous year 1, but it's fine now. I think he's their best defenseman. I don't really think it's close. Yeah. But all right, they're making the picks, so we're gonna see. I feel like Doug Armstrong never does what I think he should do, but he's way better at his job than I would be at his job. So I don't know. Did they take a U.S. player? I don't know. Maybe take a U.S.
I was promised the Blues would not trade back. I was lied to from our guy Stephen Ground.
Where's Doug Armstrong?
Please don't reach for a D-man.
Where's Peter Chiarelli?
Do you think they could go Yuri Kulich?
Maybe. I feel like
he was one of my guys.
They did take a center last year. I don't think that matters that much, but they do have Thomas and O'Reilly down the middle for a while.
Blues select Jimmy Snuggerud.
All right. So they go with the U.S. player, as I just said. So they go with a winger. They go with Jimmy Snuggerud. Why did they have to do a harder name?
Snuggerud.
It's really interesting with the Lambert thing. I don't think the Blues are the type of team that was going to take that shot in the dark. I'm happy to see an American-born player drafted for the Blues. I like that. Not a player that I know a ton about, but I know that he reminded me, anything I've read, the first thing I thought about with him was like a Washington Capitals type winger. So I wouldn't have been surprised if they took him. But we have some more Central Division news, and it's a trade this time.
What you got? Interesting.
Leafs are trading Peter Mrazek to the Blackhawks. Believe it involves number 25 and Mrazek for number 38.
Holy cow.
So the Blackhawks aren't really messing around too much, I would say. So I think a lot of Blues fans are probably thinking they probably should have taken Brad Lambert. But I think we got to realize that the Blues are not the type of team that's going to take that big shot on a guy who's falling that much, you know? And it's not like he's falling that much. I think people kind of had him pegged at 13 if the Islanders kept their pick. But it seems like a team more like towards the end of the first round, like Tampa at 31. If Lambert's still there, I think Tampa would take him. So I don't know. I feel like it's interesting. I guess we could do a little bit of, deep diving on Snuggerud's stats and maybe figure out how to pronounce his name at some point.
I think you're having more of an issue here than what I am.
It's really it's getting me. I'm very confused.
Snuggerud.
Snuggerud. Do you think that's it? Is that it? Did they
Yeah.
say that? Okay.
Yeah.
Snuggerud. Nailed it. We're back. Okay. Hockey DB already hasn't updated. So Minneapolis born. So the Wild might have taken him at 24. You never know. His father, Dave, was a forward with 3 teams from 89 to 93. So he's got that going. 26 points in 26 games with the U.S. national development team this season. I don't even know why I'm looking at Hockey DB. They don't give as much information as elite prospects. But, let me see if I can find the Hockey Writers profile on him as well.
I'm trying to find some information here on him. On McKean's. If anybody, we have no affiliation here whatsoever with McKean's hockey, but these guys are absolutely fantastic here with their insight. The
2G1C podcast account. I'm pretty sure Steven's probably the one tweeting this, but this is a good point, and this is something that Blues fans should think about right now. If you can't trust the Blues amateur scouting by now, who can you trust? Only one first-round bust in Armstrong's tenure, and it was Jordan Schmaltz, who at least made the NHL. So I think you got to trust them. I mean, they've drafted very well for a lot of years now. I know Bill Armstrong was a big part of that, and he's not here anymore, but yeah.
All right, let's see.
It says Jimmy Snuggerud, a.k.a. James Snuggerud. So I don't know if we're supposed to, I'm assuming we're going to call him Jimmy, but keep in mind,
I'm sure we're going to call him Jimmy. All right, so let's see. So McKean's hockey, one of the most underrated players here in the U.S. development program. Snuggerud is a terrific complementary piece here on a scoring line. His progression from last year to this year has been extremely impressive, pointing to a strong work ethic and willingness to accept instruction/feedback. He's a well-rounded player. He is most known for his ability to score high-end shot. However, his creativity and transition and overall playmaking touch are underrated. He also combines good instincts with a high work rate. Let's see. He's one of the top players, one of the most improved players at the program. He struggled to build speed with short, choppy, and inefficient strides. As a result, he was more of a trailer than a leader offensively. Additionally, his lack of strength and balance prevented him from taking greater advantage of his shot, as he struggled to play throughout contact and adjust to passes not directly on his blade. He still builds speed quickly through longer, more powerful strides, uses his linear quickness to drive wide with the puck to be extremely active forechecker. He will need to continue to improve his power of his few strides to truly give himself NHL caliber separation.
So I have some good news about him, which would be that the Athletics scouting report on him says that you can build a power play around him with his one-timer. So that's good.
Like that.
It seems like whoever the future second line center is, it seems like he'd be a perfect winger on that line. Like I kind of envision a Jake Neighbors, Zachary Bolduc, Jimmy Snuggerud line eventually. I mean, it could happen.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, it seems like, from everything that I'm just kind of scanning here really fast is that he has the ability to just blend well with his puck control, and he has a good chance to become a very, very good complementary, solid middle six forward here in the NHL. So, he's still probably a couple of years away here at this point, which, doesn't surprise me. The Blues don't necessarily need him to be here up just right away. It's just, I don't know. I was somewhat hoping that they're going to go with the defenseman. They need it. I think that they need more help on the back end here than what they do as here in their forward selections, but that's just me.
Yeah, I think that's fair. So one thing I will say is that Bob McKenzie had him 17th on his final
Okay.
rankings. So that's good.
Okay.
To give you a reference point, he did have Rutger McGroarty 27th, so not a big fan of him. He had Brad Lambert 16th, so it's one spot off.
Yeah.
He also did have Slavkovsky ahead of Wright, which is interesting.
Well, I mean, again, he went 4th overall, so I don't know. We will have to be able to see what happens here with the Blues. I mean, again, they've still got plenty of different options here in the second. Well, they actually don't have a second round pick.
Third round
pick.
There's always a trade
So,
that they could make to get into the second round, but I don't think I see that happening unless it's somebody they really like.
Could you be able to fetch a second round pick, even a late second round pick for Ivan Barbashev?
You know what would be hilarious if they traded Barbashev, got a second round pick, and then took Barbashev's brother with that pick. That would really be something.
Man. Both he and Kyra's brother are available for draft. So
I have a
I would
feeling they're
love
going
to
to take
have
one of them. I think they're going to take
I have a good feeling that they're going to, and I actually hope that they're going to be able to take at least one of them. I mean, I don't see how you don't. I mean, obviously, if the pick's not there, the pick's not there. But, you can only kind of do so much.
So Minnesota just took Danila Yurov, who I did mention a little bit there as a possibility for the Blues. And also we have a good thing about Jimmy Snuggerud is that he only has 508 followers on Twitter. So he's focused in that regard, doesn't need the Twitter following. And his Twitter bio just says hockey. So I like it. I like it a lot. I guess we'll see what Chicago does real quick here and then wrap it up. They have the 25th pick now. So we'll see what they do. This is their third pick. Do they have another one after this? I don't think they do in the first. What's hilarious to me is that they got more for Brandon Hagel than Alex DeBrincat. That's really something. I know the pick won't be as good as 7 with Tampa, but still, that is 2 first-round picks for Brandon Hagel. Man.
I'm really liking the number of U.S.-born players that are being selected.
Yeah, it reminds me a little bit of 2019, except 2019 was a little bit more high-end with Jack Hughes and Zegras and Turcotte and Boldy. A little bit more of the high-end guys, but you look, I mean, Cooley at 3, Gauthier at 5. You had Nazar at 13, McGroarty at 14, and then Snuggerud at 23. And you still got more with all the defensemen, Casey and Hudson. So defensemen out there as well from the U.S. So Mrazek,
you got to be able to feel for Peter Mrazek.
Man,
I mean, he just keeps going from worst situation to worst situation.
Yeah, Toronto.
And somehow
they're not going to like you there.
Yeah, and somehow he's still picking up all kinds of things. McGuire thinks that they're freeing up money for Husso, which makes a ton of sense.
Literally just read that right when you said it.
Yeah, makes a ton of sense.
Yeah, I think Husso is going to end up in Canada. I think it's a safe bet. Edmonton is going to get Jack Campbell. Toronto's going to get Ville Husso. You heard it here first.
Oh, boy. That would just be poetic justice, and I'm all for the chaos. All for it.
So
there's 2 more picks here for Central Division teams, 30 and 32 here at this point.
After Chicago, right?
Yeah.
So the Blackhawks are picking up the full contract, which I think had to be a big part of this for Mrazek. So that throws you at $3.8 million for the next 2 seasons. Modified no trade. Interesting, he has a modified no trade. He must not put Chicago on that list. I wonder how many teams. A 10-team no trade list didn't put Chicago. Interesting. I wonder if all those guys, no matter what state the team is in, just like if they're in original 6, I want to play for them. I don't know. I feel like players think about that. Lambert might go to Chicago, which would disappoint me a little bit because I'd rather see him go to like Montreal.
So I'm looking here at a couple of different comparisons, and they're saying Jimmy Snuggerud equals Jake Neighbors. So why do the Blues pick another version of Jake Neighbors?
I think there's a bit of a difference. I think Neighbors is more of like a more of a power forward, I think. I think there's a bit of a difference in that Snuggerud's got a better shot, but Neighbors is like a better like Snuggerud's more like a Jordan Kyrou, not with the speed, but like the shot. And Neighbors is more like a Braden Shin. That's kind of if we're going to compare him to players in the team now. By the way, the Blackhawks just took somebody I've never heard of in my entire
Frank
life.
Nazar. Oh my gosh. So
who the hell is Sam Renzel? I mean, did I just read that correctly?
let's see. So
Sam Renzel, who the hell is that? They could have taken Luca Del Bel Baluz, dude. Wow. Kyle Davidson looks younger than me. That dude's there? I wonder what he was on Bob McKenzie's rankings. Blackhawks take 2 defensemen. That's another U.S. player.
So the Hawks picked Frank Nazar at 13. Defenseman Korchinski at 7, and now Sam Renzel at
25. High school player. Interesting. That is something. 6'4". He's probably that is, man, that is every single comment I saw, which doesn't matter, it's Twitter, but every single comment I saw said, who? There's the Hockey Writers profile on him. Bob McKenzie had him 47th.
Oh man, that's probably a reach here for them.
Well, here's the thing. They're a team that has a ton of time to develop players. So if anybody's going to reach for a guy like this, it's going to be them. He's the number 1 high school prospect. I think it's cool. You got a U.S. high school player getting drafted in the first round. I think that's pretty cool. We'll see how it works out. I hope it does, and I hope the Blackhawks are terrible. I hope he's good, but they're terrible. That's what I'll say about that.
Boy. I don't know. It'll be interesting to see what the Blues are going to do, if they're going to do anything here tomorrow, like during the second round. Do you think they're going to do anything?
I think tomorrow's going to be a quiet day for them in terms of the second round, the beginning of the day at least, by the first 3 hours, because they'll drag out the second round as long as they can, drag out the third round, and then 4 through 7 they're just going to fly, would be my assumption on how they're going to do it. But that's usually how it is, I suppose. So, yeah, I don't know. I think the Tarasenko thing is going to come to a head at some point. I think Carolina is the team that I'd look at right now is probably getting him, if I had to guess. I don't know what the return is going to be because I'd like to think the Blues want a player back and maybe a pick for next year. So I don't really know who on Carolina's roster is worth it because I originally said give me Seth Jarvis. I don't think that's going to happen. I think he's probably in their plans. What's Brady Shea's contract look like? I mean, if you want to fix the defensive problem, I don't know if that's probably not your answer, but he's got 5.25 left for 2 seasons. Yeah, I don't love that. Yeah. So I don't know. I think Tarasenko thing's going to come to a head. I don't think it happens tomorrow. I think they'll probably just make their picks, head down, make your picks. I think there'll be a guy in the third round that'll fall to them that you kind of view as maybe a steal, like Robertson was viewed last year in the third round. So I think that's an option. And then I think, what do they got, 4, 5, and 6, nothing in the 7th. So there'll be guys there. I mean, there's always guys there, but
there's still going to be plenty of those guys that we're going to be looking at. It happens every single year. They're going to be looking at them in the 40s, 50s, 60s and saying, how in the world did this guy fall that far? And I think this draft class, again, especially due to all of the COVID, that you're going to have no idea what happened. I mean, and these guys are just going to be all over the board. And Shane Wright ultimately could have been the best option. We don't know. Don't know.
Yeah.
So
we'll see.
All right.
We will see what happens. I guess we'll wrap this thing up. I think we'll be doing an episode on Sunday. Probably upload Monday because that Free agency starts on the 13th, which is next Wednesday. We'll preview that. We'll cover the rest of the draft in that episode and what the Blues did after the first-round pick. We'll probably touch on the first-round pick a little bit more as well. And then we'll talk about free agency, preview that, talk about possible trades with Tarasenko and Krug and whatever could happen with the Blues. So you can check that out at TBN Pod on Twitter. You can follow us. That's where you're watching it right now. You can follow me on Twitter at Ethan Carter SW. You can follow Mike on Twitter at
Danger Powers 19.
And we will see everybody on Sunday. I guess it's going to be uploaded Monday for the next episode, which should be a good one because there's going to be a lot to talk about. There's going to be a lot to preview, a lot of different things going on around the Central. I'm sure we'll touch on that. Since I'm uploading this is episode 14, the free agency episode Sunday will be episode 15, and we'll see you then for that. Believe Network, Blue Note Podcast. We'll see you for episode 15.
Goodbye.